My son-in-law, Craig, slid a manila folder across my kitchen table, like he was doing me the greatest favor of his life. "Just sign where the tabs are, Marion," he said. My daughter Lisa sat beside him and would not meet my eyes. Let me take you back to how it all started. My name is Marion Calloway. I am 72 years old. For 35 years, I have been quietly doing something that most people in my life never thought to ask about. I have been investing in the stock market. My husband George started teaching me in 1987. He was an engineer, methodical and patient, the kind of man who kept every receipt in a labeled folder. He sat me down at our kitchen table with a yellow legal pad and said, "Marion, if something happens to me, you need to know how money works." I rolled my eyes. I was 37 years old, we were perfectly healthy, and I had a classroom full of fourth graders to think about. George passed in 1991. A heart attack. 51 years old. I found the yellow legal pads in his desk drawer. 3 of them filled front and back with his careful handwriting. Stock tickers. Investment rationale. Projected growth. Dividend histories going back a decade. He had not left me a note. He had left me a roadmap. I cried for a week. Then I sat down at that same kitchen table and I began to learn. What I found in those yellow legal pads would quietly shape the next 35 years of my life, and not one person who underestimated me ever saw it coming. Over 3 decades, I made mistakes. I sold things I should have held. I held things too long. But George had written one rule on the very first page, and I never broke it. Never invest in what you don't understand, and never panic in a storm. I kept that rule. By the time I retired from teaching in 2014, I had built something I was genuinely proud of. I did not talk about it at dinner parties. I did not mention it to my daughter Lisa or her husband Craig when they bought their big house in Naperville with the 3-car garage and the heated driveway. That was their business. Mine was mine. Craig is a financial advisor. Has been for 15 years. He works at one of those wealth management firms downtown, the kind with marble floors and a name that sounds important. He is 44 years old, and he has always had a way of explaining things to me very slowly, as if a concept like index funds might take a moment to land. I never corrected him. It started at Thanksgiving 2 years ago. We were all at Lisa and Craig's house. The grandkids were chasing the dog around the backyard. I was helping clear the dishes when Craig started talking about the market with his brother-in-law, Scott. November's been rough. Craig said, "The small investors always panic right about now. They get emotional." I handed a stack of plates to Lisa and said nothing. "How about you, Marion?" Craig asked. He was smiling in a way that was not quite unkind, but not quite kind either. "You have some stocks, right? A few things George left you." "A few things," I said. "Smart to hold on to them. Sentimental value and all that." I went back to the kitchen and cut the pie. But Craig was just getting started. And what came next, I could not have anticipated. The comments came in small waves after that. At Easter, when I mentioned I had shifted money out of a sector I had been watching, Craig chuckled. "Marion, you want to be careful with that. Timing the market is what gets amateur investors in trouble." At Lisa's birthday dinner in June, I overheard him on the phone with a colleague. He said his mother-in-law had some stocks she had been lucky with. I heard that one. He didn't know I did. That word, lucky, it settled into me like a splinter. Then came a Saturday afternoon in August. Craig and Lisa had driven over to help me replace a ceiling fan. After we ate lunch, Craig leaned back in his chair and asked what I had in the market. I told him I was diversified. Blue chips, some index funds, several positions I had held for more than 20 years. He nodded with the patient expression I had come to know well. That's great, Marion. Honestly, it sounds like you've just been lucky with the timing. A lot of first-time investors stumble into a good run and mistake it for skill. He paused and folded his hands on the table. If you ever want me to take a real look at your portfolio, I'm happy to help. No charge, of course. I looked at my daughter across the table. She was looking at her phone. I'll keep that in mind, I said. 3 weeks later, Lisa called. She said Craig had been thinking about me. She said they were both a little worried. The market had been volatile. I had built my portfolio without professional guidance. What if I lost a significant portion? I was 72. I couldn't afford to start over. Mom, Craig could really help you, she said. He does this for a living. I asked her quietly whether Craig had ever managed a portfolio for 35 years without a single negative annual return. There was a pause on the line. Mom, that's not really what this is about. He just wants to help. The following Sunday, they invited me to dinner at a restaurant in the city. White tablecloths. The grandkids were with a sitter. I thought it was a family dinner. I wore George's pearl earrings. We ordered. We talked about the children. Then Craig reached under the table and set his briefcase on the empty chair beside him. He opened it and placed a thick manila folder next to my water glass. What was inside that folder changed everything. Marion, I want to be upfront. He said, Lisa and I have been talking, and we'd both feel a lot better if you had real guidance with your investments. I've drafted a limited power of attorney. Simple, really. It just means I can make adjustments on your behalf, protect you from market swings. You'd still own everything. It just puts someone qualified in the driver's seat. He smiled. Lisa smiled. They had rehearsed this. I looked at the folder. I looked at my daughter. I thought about George's yellow legal pads. Thank you, Craig. I said, may I take this home to look it over? Of course. He said warmly. Take all the time you need. I tucked the folder into my purse and finished my salmon. I drove home alone that night. I did not cry. I was far past crying. What I felt was something quieter and colder than anger. It was clarity. I sat at my kitchen table with Craig's folder and a cup of tea, and I read every page. What I found was not a simple document. It gave Craig authority to make trades, rebalance my holdings, and charge a management fee of 1% annually. 1% of my portfolio. Every single year. I closed the folder. Then I opened my laptop and pulled up my brokerage account. I looked at the total at the top of the screen. The number I had built over 35 years from George's roadmap and 3 decades of patience and steady nerves. I looked at it for a long time. 1% of that number was not a small amount of money. Not at all. I closed the laptop, and I decided. I made 2 phone calls the next morning. The first was to my attorney, Phyllis, a sharp and practical woman I have known since 1998. The second was to my oldest friend, Bet, who has been investing nearly as long as I have and who has a very colorful vocabulary for people who underestimate women with financial knowledge. Phyllis confirmed what I already suspected. Signing that document would have been a serious mistake. Bet said something I cannot repeat here. I did not call Lisa or Craig. I simply said nothing and went to work. I called my broker, David, who has managed my account for 18 years. I asked him to prepare a full performance report going back to the very beginning. 35 years of trades, annual returns, dividends reinvested, compounded growth across every market cycle. All of it organized and bound. He was quiet for a moment on the phone. Then he said, "Marian, I would be honored to put that together." While I waited for that report, I did some research of my own. Craig's firm publicly disclosed its client performance figures. I found them without much trouble. I will not tell you exactly what I saw, but I will say that Craig's remarks about beginner's luck took on a particular irony when I set those numbers beside my own. What that comparison showed me gave me everything I needed to walk into that room with my head high. I also made 2 other quiet decisions during those weeks. Years ago, I had opened college savings accounts for each of my grandchildren, Ella, Owen, and little Maggie. I had been contributing steadily and investing those accounts the same patient way I invested everything else. I asked David to include those balances in his report as well. The second decision involved a local nonprofit called the Women's Financial Literacy Project. Their director, a woman named Rosa, had been trying to fund a new workshop series for 2 years. Free workshops for women in their 40s, 50s, and 60s who had never had anyone sit them down and explain how a brokerage account worked. I called Rosa on a Tuesday afternoon. I told her I wanted to support the series, and I had one condition. I wanted to teach at least one session myself. Rosa laughed the best kind of laugh. She said, "Marian, when can you start?" I waited 6 weeks after that restaurant dinner. Then I called Lisa and told her I was ready to discuss Craig's proposal. I said I had some questions and thought it would be helpful to meet at David's office downtown, since he knew my accounts best and could answer anything Craig might want to ask. Craig agreed immediately. He sounded genuinely pleased. We met on a Wednesday morning. Craig wore his good suit. I wore George's pearl earrings. David had set up the conference room with a projector and a long, polished table. He had printed bound copies of my 35-year performance report and placed one in front of each person at the table without a word. Then he sat back and folded his hands. Craig picked up his copy. He began to flip through the pages. I watched his face. I will not describe that moment in too much detail. I will only say that the patient, confident expression Craig usually wore began to shift somewhere around page 4, when he reached the annualized return figures for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, and 35 years. He set the report down. "Marian," he said. He stopped. He tried again. Those are my accounts." I said, The ones I built on George's notes, starting in 1991. The ones you called beginner's luck. Lisa had both hands wrapped around her coffee cup. She was reading her copy very carefully. "I'm not going to be signing your document." I said, "I never was. But I wanted both of you to have the full picture, since you've been so worried about me." Craig cleared his throat. "Marian, I didn't realize. I never meant to suggest." "I know you didn't," I said. And I meant that without a trace of cruelty. That was the simple truth of it. He hadn't realized. He had looked at a 72-year-old retired school teacher, and he had assumed. That was the whole of it. I told them about the college savings accounts then. Ella, Owen, and little Maggie. Fully funded for 4 years at a good state university, each one. Craig's face went through something complicated and quiet. Lisa set her coffee cup down. She looked at me with an expression I had not seen from her in a long time. "Mom," she said, "I'm sorry." Those 2 words came to rest on me gently, the way the right words do when they finally arrive after being a long time coming. "I know, sweetheart," I said. We sat in that conference room for another hour. Craig asked me questions. Real ones. Curious ones. How I had managed volatility in 2008. What I had done in the spring of 2020 when everything dropped. He was not the expert at the table anymore, and he seemed to understand that clearly. He listened the way a person listens when they have finally stopped performing. Before we left, I mentioned the Women's Financial Literacy Project. I told them I would be teaching a workshop series starting in September. Craig was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "That's a wonderful thing to do, Marian." George would have thought so too. I said, "That was 14 months ago. Craig and I are not best friends. We are something more honest than we were before. He respects me now in a way that is real rather than performed. He asks me genuine questions sometimes, and I answer them. Last spring he called before making a move with his own investments and asked what I thought. I told him what I thought. He listened. He followed my advice. Lisa and I had a long phone call the week after the meeting, just the 2 of us. She told me she had never known about George's yellow legal pads. She had been a teenager when her father died, and she had never understood that he had left me a map. I told her the whole story that night. We were on the phone for 3 hours. Little Maggie turned 8 last spring. She has been asking me about money lately. At Christmas, she sat down at my kitchen table and asked what a stock was. I went to the cabinet where I keep the school supplies and I pulled out a yellow legal pad, the same kind George used to buy, and I sat down beside her. I told her that a stock is a small piece of a company, and that if you are patient and you pay attention and you never panic in a storm, remarkable things can happen across the years. She wrote that down in her careful 8-year-old handwriting. I thought about George the way I always do when something goes right. The Women's Financial Literacy Project workshop ran for 8 weeks last fall. 23 women came. Several of them cried when they understood how much ground they had already lost by not starting sooner. I told them what George told me the very first time I sat down with him at a kitchen table. You start from where you are. That is the only place anyone has ever started from. 3 of those women have opened brokerage accounts since then. One of them called me last month to say her very first dividend had come through. She sounded so proud, she could barely get the words out. I was proud too. I still sit at this kitchen table. The same one where Craig slid that folder toward me like he was the expert, and I was the problem to be solved. The same one where George and I used to have our Sunday morning coffee before he was gone far too soon. The market goes up. The market comes down. I have lived through enough of both to know that patience is not a passive thing. It is a decision you make quietly, without applause, on ordinary mornings when no one is watching. Nobody needed to know what was in my accounts. What mattered was that I knew. I think sometimes about what it means to understand something that other people have already decided you can't. There is a particular kind of quiet confidence that comes from that knowledge. It doesn't make you loud. It doesn't make you unkind. It just makes you very, very hard to dismiss. Craig discovered that on a Wednesday morning in a downtown conference room. And I discovered it 31 years ago, sitting alone at this table with 3 yellow legal pads and a cup of tea gone cold, learning to take care of myself because the man who loved me most had thought far enough ahead to leave me a map. Tell me in the comments, has anyone in your life ever underestimated something you were quietly building for years? My son called on a Tuesday afternoon and said, "Mom, I think it's time to find Cooper a new home." I looked at my golden retriever stretched across the kitchen floor, chin on his paws, one brown eye watching me with the patience of something old and loyal. "I'll call you back," I said, and I hung up. Let me take you back to how it all started. My name is Carol Whitfield. I am 72 years old. I live in the same house my late husband Ray and I built ourselves in 1987, on a country road in western Massachusetts, where the sugar maples turn the color of flames every October, and the neighbors still wave when you drive past. I have lived in this house for 37 years. I know every drawer, every floorboard, every draft that finds its way in around the kitchen window when the wind comes from the north. This is not just a house. It is a place that was built by hand, with intention, and I have never once wanted to be anywhere else. Ray passed away 3 years ago. Pancreatic cancer, which does not give you much warning and does not ask your permission. We had 41 years together. 41 years in this house with its wide front porch and its creaky third stair and its garden that Ray planted from seed, and I have kept going every spring since. I am not a sentimental woman by nature, but I know the difference between a house and a home. I taught high school English for 31 years. I have graded close to 10,000 essays. I can spot a sentence with a hidden meaning before most people finish reading the paragraph. That particular skill turned out to be more useful in retirement than I ever expected. Cooper came into our lives 8 months before Ray died. Ray picked him out of a litter at a farm about 40 miles north of here, drove up on a Saturday without telling me, came home with a golden puppy tucked inside his jacket. He held that little dog up to the kitchen light and said, "This one's got good eyes, Carol. You can always trust the eyes." Ray was a man who believed in that kind of thing. Cooper was supposed to be Ray's dog. But Ray got sick faster than any of us were ready for, and Cooper became mine. Somewhere in those long months of hospice nurses and quiet evenings and learning how to exist inside a silence I had never chosen, Cooper became the reason I got out of bed each morning. He still is. He is 9 years old now, and his muzzle has gone nearly white, and some mornings he is stiff getting to his feet. I wait for him. We walk the back road at whatever pace he sets. That is a perfectly acceptable pace for me. I am not a woman who falls apart. I have buried my parents and my husband and my closest friend from college. I know what grief looks like from the inside, and I know how to keep moving through it. But I am also not a woman who misses what is happening right in front of her. My son David is 44. He works in project management for a construction firm, lives about 2 hours south of me in Connecticut, and has a wife named Melissa, who I have always tried very genuinely to like. Melissa is not a bad person. I want to be precise about that. She is just the kind of person who walks into a room and begins almost immediately taking inventory of what needs to change. They started coming up to see me more often after Ray passed. Once a month, then more. I told myself it was love. I told myself they were worried, and maybe some part of it really was that simple. But somewhere around last fall, the visits started carrying a different kind of weight. Comments that were dressed in the clothing of concern, but landed differently if you listened carefully. Mom, this house is a lot to take care of by yourself, isn't it? That driveway must be hard to keep up with in the winter. Cooper's slowing down a little, it looks like. That must take a lot out of you. I answered all of these honestly. Yes, the house takes work. Yes, I hire Tommy Bancroft's son to help when the snow gets deep. Yes, Cooper is slowing down and I slow down with him, and we manage just fine, thank you. But I kept each of those conversations in a very specific drawer in my mind. English teachers do that. We annotate everything. What I found in Melissa's coat pocket a few weeks before Christmas would tell me exactly what they had been planning all along. The December visit lasted a weekend. Melissa's allergies, which had never once surfaced in the 15 years I had known her, suddenly became the centerpiece of every room she walked into. She sneezed at dinner. She asked whether I could keep Cooper out of the living room. She left a box of antihistamines on the bathroom counter as though it were a permanent fixture now, as though I should expect it to be there. On the second morning, David sat down across from me at the kitchen table while Melissa was upstairs, and used a voice I had never heard from him before. It was careful and measured, and just slightly too gentle. The voice you might use with someone you have quietly decided is no longer fully in charge of their own situation. He said that he and Melissa had been doing a lot of thinking. He said the house was a great deal for one person. He said Cooper required a level of energy that might be better spent on other things. He mentioned, with studied casualness, that there were wonderful families out there who would absolutely love an older golden retriever. Families with yards and children who would adore him. I asked him whether he thought I didn't have time. He looked at the table. He said he was only thinking about what was best for me. I slid a plate of gingerbread across the table and told him I appreciated his concern. Then I changed the subject with the thoroughness I perfected over 31 years of redirecting a classroom. I smiled and poured more coffee and let him believe the conversation had landed softly. But I left that drawer in my mind open a little wider. 3 days after Christmas, I was moving Melissa's coat from the back hook by the door to make room for my own, and a folded pamphlet slipped out of the pocket and fell to the kitchen floor. Meadowbrook Senior Living. Independent and assisted living in the Connecticut River Valley. There was a sticky note on the front cover. David's handwriting, I would know it anywhere, because he makes his sevens exactly the way I taught him to when he was 7 years old. The note read, "Ask about spring availability." Pet restrictions. Pet restrictions. I stood in my own kitchen and held that pamphlet for a long moment. Cooper walked over and pressed his nose quietly against my leg, the way he does when he senses I need something warm to hold onto. I folded the pamphlet and put it into my own coat pocket. Then I went into my study and I opened a fresh notebook to the first page. 3 weeks later, my friend Margaret called me from across the road, and what she had found on Facebook made the pamphlet look like a very minor curiosity indeed. Margaret Osgood has been my neighbor for 28 years and my friend for just as long. She is 75 years old, sharp as a new pencil, and has absolutely no patience for pretense in any form. She called me on a Thursday morning in January and said, "Carol, I want you to sit down first." I sat down. She had been scrolling through our local community Facebook group, the one where people sell furniture and argue about the road conditions on Route 9. And there, posted 3 days earlier, was a listing she recognized immediately. Rehoming beloved golden retriever. 8 years old, gentle, wonderful with children and seniors. Family circumstances have changed. Owner relocating. Free to a good home. The photograph was Cooper. Sitting in my garden last July, Ray's rose bushes in full pink bloom behind him. A photograph I had taken myself, on my own phone, on a summer afternoon I remembered perfectly. Melissa had used my photograph to post my dog for adoption in my own community's Facebook group. 3 days ago. Without a single word to me. Margaret had saved a screenshot the moment she recognized him. I thanked her. I hung up. I sat with that information for about 20 minutes, long enough to let it settle into something I could work with rather than something that would undo me. Then I made 2 phone calls. The first was to Facebook, to report the post as unauthorized use of my image and my property. It was removed within 24 hours. The second was to Patricia Hinz. Patricia is 68 years old, retired after 30 years at a regional law firm in Springfield, and she has been in the same book club as me for 11 years. We have read everything from Middlemarch to the occasional thriller that someone slips in claiming it has literary merit. I have her cell phone number. I used it on that Thursday morning, and I told her everything, in the order it had happened, without editorializing. Patricia listened the way good attorneys do, without interrupting, taking each piece in as I laid it out. The months of comments. The pamphlet with David's handwriting. The Facebook post using my photograph. The shape of it, all when you set the pieces side by side. When I finished, she was quiet for just a moment. Then she said, "Carol, do you have a current will?" I did. Ray and I had updated everything after he passed. The house went to David. The account split between David and several charities we had supported for years. "Do you want to keep it that way?" she asked. I thought about the pamphlet. I thought about Cooper's photograph posted in the Facebook group where anyone from my town might have seen it. I thought about Ray holding a small golden puppy up to the light and saying you could always trust the eyes. "No," I said. "I don't think I do." What Patricia suggested next was something I never would have arrived at on my own, but the moment she laid it out, I knew it was exactly right. We spent 2 hours on the phone that day, and then another long call the following week when she had the documents drafted and ready to walk through. The first thing I did was document everything properly. The pamphlet, photographed flat on my kitchen table, with the sticky note clearly visible. The screenshot Margaret had saved. The notebook I had been keeping since December, with dates and the exact words I had written down that same evening while they were still fresh. Patricia said that even if I never needed to show any of it to anyone, the act of organizing it was its own form of clarity. She was right about that. The second thing was the estate. Patricia structured a trust. The house would remain mine for the rest of my life, full stop. That part was written in ironclad language. When I passed, it would go into a trust for David's children, my grandchildren, to be accessible when the youngest of them reached 25. Cooper's care was written in as a specific provision. If I went before he did, the estate would fund whatever he needed for the rest of his life. Patricia would serve as trustee. The house was no longer passing directly to David. It would reach his children when they were old enough and seasoned enough to decide for themselves what a thing like that means. I felt something settle in my chest when I signed those documents. Like a window finally latching, closed against a draft I had been sitting in for months without quite naming it. The third thing I did was tell Margaret. She said, "Good for you, Carol," and showed up the next morning with a casserole, because that is exactly who Margaret is. I baked a lemon pound cake the morning David and Melissa were due to arrive in February. It was Ray's favorite, and I make it when I need my hands occupied and my mind quiet. Cooper positioned himself at the kitchen window and watched the driveway the way he always does when he senses company approaching. His tail moved slowly. When their car came up the drive, I opened the front door before they could knock. Cooper stood beside me, where he belonged. The look on Melissa's face when she stepped onto the porch and saw him there told me she had been expecting a very different scene entirely. We sat down. Tea was poured. David used the careful voice again, rehearsed, slightly too gentle, the one that had been in rotation since fall. He talked about the house being a great deal for one person. About the winter. About how much they worried. About a place they had found in the Connecticut River Valley, really lovely grounds, not too far from them, lots of activities people my age. He said it carefully, building to it, the way you do when you have been preparing a speech. Melissa said they could visit all the time. She said it like it was a gift she was unwrapping on my behalf. I let them finish. I poured myself more tea. I set the cup down. Then I said, "David, I know about the Meadowbrook pamphlet." The quiet that settled over my kitchen was the most complete silence I had heard since the morning after Ray died. I found it in December. I said, "In Melissa's coat pocket, with your handwriting on the note." David looked at Melissa. Melissa looked at the table. I also know about the Facebook post. I said. Melissa's head came up. Her mouth opened and then closed again. Cooper is still here because Margaret saw the listing the morning it went up and called me immediately. I said, and because Facebook agreed it was not Melissa's post to make. Those are the reasons he is still here. Not because anyone asked me. I kept my voice level. There was nothing left to be angry about in that room, because I had already taken care of everything that needed taking care of. David said, "Mom, we were trying to help." And I believe he meant that. I do still. David is not a cruel man. He is a man who looked at his mother alone in a large house with an aging dog and identified a problem he wanted to manage. He comes by that honestly, It is something he inherited from Ray, that instinct to fix. He had decided I was something that needed fixing, and he had moved ahead. He had simply not thought to ask me first. "I know you believed you were helping," I said, "but you made plans about my home and my dog without a single conversation with me. You researched a facility without mentioning it. Melissa listed Cooper for adoption in our community without my knowledge or my consent. Those are not small things, David." I folded my hands on the table the way I used to in a parent conference, when I needed the room to understand who was actually in charge of the conversation. So I made some decisions of my own. I told them about the trust. Not every detail. Patricia's name was mine to keep. But the shape of it. The house no longer passing directly to David. Going instead to his children, in time, when they were adults who could understand what something like that means and decide for themselves what to do with it. Cooper's care writ in specifically and permanently. David went very still. It was the same stillness I remembered from when he was 17, and I had already known about the party before he came home to explain himself. Melissa said, quietly, "Carol, I didn't think about how the post would feel to you." I truly did not think it through. I looked at her for a moment. I believed her. Not as an excuse for what she had done, but as an accurate description of how it had happened. She had been so focused on the outcome, she wanted that the person most affected had simply not been part of the calculation. "I think that's what we needed to talk about," I said. I slid the lemon pound cake toward them across the table. "And now, would you like to hear what Cooper and I have been doing this winter?" The afternoon shifted after that. Not into something easy or light, that would have been dishonest and we all knew it. But into something real. David ate 2 slices of cake. Cooper eventually walked over and set his heavy white-muzzled head on David's knee, because dogs forgive at a pace that puts the rest of us to shame and always have. Before they left, David held me at the front door in a hug that had nothing rehearsed in it. He held on for a beat longer than necessary, the way he used to when he was very small and something had frightened him. He said, "I'm sorry, Mom." I held him back. He is my son. He will always be my son, and that fact has never once been in question. "I know, sweetheart," I said. "Drive safe." That was 4 months ago now. David calls differently these days. He asks what I am reading, tells me something his daughter said that made him laugh on the drive to school, complains about highway traffic the way people do when they are simply talking, not managing. The careful voice is mostly gone. I had not realized how much I had missed the real one until it came back. Melissa sends me texts from time to time. Small ones. A recipe she thought I might like. A short video of a dog doing something foolish. Last week she sent me a photograph of a golden retriever puppy she had seen at a park, and wrote made me think of Cooper. I chose to receive that in exactly the spirit it was sent. Cooper is 9 years old. His muzzle is almost entirely white now. Some mornings, I wait for him to find his footing before we head out, and we walk the back road together at whatever pace feels right, under the maple trees that are only just beginning to bud again after a long winter. Ray would have loved watching him go gray. He would have said, "He's getting distinguished, Carol." The same way he said it when my own hair started turning. My house stands exactly where it has always stood. The third stair still creaks in exactly the same place. The garden is waiting for May, when the soil warms up enough to work properly. I did not give away my dog. I did not give away my home. I did not give away myself. And the people who truly love me are still right here. Tell me in the comments, has anyone ever started making decisions about your life without thinking to ask you first? And what did you do when you realized it? I would love to hear your story. The zipper split at 10:47 on a Saturday morning. The wedding was at 1 o'clock. And Diane, the woman who had smiled at my needle and thread like it was a child's crayon drawing, was standing in my doorway holding her daughter's wedding gown and shaking. Let me take you back to how it all started. My mother put a needle in my hand when I was 11 years old. We were in the kitchen of our farmhouse outside Columbus, Ohio, and she said, "Beverly, if you can sew, you will never be at the mercy of anyone else." I did not fully understand what she meant until I was grown. But I learned the craft deeply and faithfully, and I never put it down. For nearly 4 decades, I worked as a professional seamstress. Bridal alterations, custom gowns, costume work for the local repertory theater. I did it all, and I did it well. I had a client list, a waiting period, and a reputation that spread by word of mouth the way good things always do. When Robert and I married in 1978, I made my own dress. When my niece married in 2002, I made hers. When a family friend needed a mother-of-the-bride gown altered on a Tuesday for a Saturday wedding, I was the one who solved it. Then Robert got sick, and then Robert was gone, and the business softened naturally into something gentler. I still sewed every day. I still kept my machine oiled and my scissors sharp. But the sewing room became something else too, the place where I could sit with his memory and not feel the silence pressing in too hard. The work kept my hands busy and my mind steady. That matters more than most people understand, especially at 72. My son Derek is a good man. He has his father's laugh and, unfortunately, his father's habit of going quiet when he should speak up. He met Diane at a marketing conference 8 years ago. He called me on a Thursday night to tell me about her, and I could hear something in his voice I had not heard in years, a hopefulness that had been missing since his first marriage ended. I was glad for him. Whatever else happened, I was genuinely glad. Diane is a capable, organized woman. She runs a home interiors account online that has a substantial following. She knows exactly how a room should look, how a table should be set, how an event should unfold. She is not unkind. I want to be clear about that because it matters to the story. But she grew up in a world where the value of a thing was communicated by its price, and a woman sitting quietly in a back room with a needle and thread did not register as impressive. It registered as quaint. I noticed the pattern early. Small things, as it always is at first. The first Christmas I spent at their house, I brought a table runner I had made white linen with hand-stitched holly, careful work that had taken me 2 full evenings. Diane held it up, tilted her head, and said, "Oh, how sweet. Very handmade." She said the word handmade the way someone says homemade, when they are being polite about a store-brand cake. I smiled and thanked her. She did not put it out that year, or the next. I did not make a scene. I am not a scene-making woman. But I noticed, and the noticing settled somewhere quiet inside me, the way small things do when they begin to accumulate. There was a Sunday dinner the following spring where I made the mistake, if you can call it that, of talking about my work. I had been commissioned to make a Victorian-style ball gown for the local theater's spring production. I described the construction of the panniers, the way the boning had to be shaped for a modern frame, the weeks of hand stitching involved in the skirt alone. It was work I was proud of, and I had not talked about it in company for a while. Diane listened for a moment. Then she turned to Derek and said, "Isn't it nice that your mom has her little projects to keep her busy?" She smiled warmly when she said it. She genuinely meant it as a compliment. That almost made it worse. Derek looked at his plate. He always looked at his plate. That habit of his, of going quiet at the precise moment when he should have spoken, is the thing I struggled most to forgive. But it was what happened in March of last year that changed the temperature of everything. That is the moment I keep returning to even now. Diane's daughter Cassie, her child from her first marriage, had gotten engaged to a young man named Paul the previous winter. Paul was steady and warm, and had the rare quality of making every person at a table feel equally included. I liked him immediately. Cassie herself was 27, and she had always been one of those people who made a room softer just by entering it. She and I had built a quiet, genuine friendship over 6 years, entirely our own, built at my kitchen table over tea and long Saturday morning conversations that had nothing to do with Derek or Diane. When the engagement was announced, the wedding planning began within days. Diane had a binder. She had a color palette. She had a venue under discussion, and a caterer being evaluated, and a florist shortlisted all before February arrived. She was extraordinary at this kind of organizing. I will give her that freely. And then something happened that I had not expected. Cassie came to see me alone one Tuesday afternoon. She sat at my kitchen table with her hands wrapped around a mug of tea, and she asked me, quietly and a little shyly, whether I would consider making her wedding dress. She had seen photographs of the gown I made for my niece in 2002. She had always loved it. She described exactly what she wanted, something simple but with real weight to it, fabric that moved when she moved, the kind of dress that felt like herself rather than a display piece. She said she wanted it made by someone who loved her. I had to set down my own mug carefully because my hands were not quite steady. I said yes before she had finished asking. But here is what I did not know was happening at the same time. Within days, things had shifted. The next time I saw Cassie, she was apologetic in a way that told me everything before she said a word. There was now a boutique in Columbus, a well-regarded designer, a team with a timeline and a fitting schedule. The subject of my making the dress had been quietly, firmly closed. I asked her once, gently, what had changed. Mom thinks it would be more consistent. She said, with everything else. She could not quite meet my eyes. I'm sorry, Grandma Bev. It's all right. I told her. And I meant it. It was all right in the sense that I would not fall apart over it. But it was not all right in the deeper sense, and we both knew that. Then came the Sunday brunch in March, the one I keep returning to even now. We were all at Derek and Diane's, mimosas, a beautiful spread, that deceptively easy kind of morning. Diane was showing photographs of Cassie's chosen gown on her phone, and I leaned in to look with everyone else. It was genuinely stunning. Silk Mikado with a cathedral train, a bustle detail in the back that was lovely in the photograph. And because I am who I am and cannot help it, I mentioned, calmly and helpfully, that the bustle style shown was a notoriously tricky construction. The bracket attachment on that particular style is the weak point. I said, "I have seen it fail at the worst possible moment more times than I can count. Whoever does the final alterations will need to reinforce the left side anchor specifically, or the whole back line will collapse. It is something the boutique team should know going in." I was not showing off. I was not being difficult. I was offering 40 years of relevant professional knowledge, the same way a doctor mentions a drug interaction, the same way an electrician flags a hazard before someone gets hurt. Diane looked up from her phone screen. She had a particular expression she used on me: patient, gentle, faintly condescending. The expression of someone managing a situation. "We have a very experienced team handling everything." As she said, "I really don't think we need to worry about that." She smiled and turned back to the table. The conversation moved on. My son did not look up from his toast. I drove home through streets I have known for 30 years, and I was quiet the whole way. Not furious. Not teary. Something more deliberate than either of those things. I sat in my sewing room for a long time. And then I made a decision. Not a dramatic one. Not a vengeful one. The kind of decision that happens when someone who has been underestimated simply stops announcing herself and starts being ready instead. What I found when I opened my cedar chest that evening set everything that followed in motion. The pattern was there, exactly where I had left it. My niece's wedding gown pattern, folded in acid-free tissue paper, with 6 pages of my own handwritten notes tucked inside, 40 years of technique in my own careful script. Bustle attachment methods for a dozen silhouette styles. Zipper placements for different fabric weights. Small notations on stress points and pressing temperatures, and the specific reinforcements that make the difference between a gown that holds and one that fails. I sat on the floor of my sewing room and read every single page. Then I made myself ready. Not dramatically. Quietly and over time. I ordered fresh thread in ivory, champagne, white, and blush. Quality silk thread that does not break under tension. I had my best dressmaking shears resharpened at the shop in Westerville I have trusted for 30 years. I reorganized my emergency kit, the small zippered bag I used to carry to every theater performance for decades, because in 30 years of costume work I learned that something always goes wrong in the final hour. I will tell you exactly what went into that kit, because it matters to what happens next. A seam ripper with a fresh blade. A full roll of double-sided fashion tape. 6 bobbins of pre-wound thread in 3 weights. Hand sewing needles in 2 sizes. Safety pins in 4 sizes, 30 of them. 3 hook and die closures in silver. A small pressing cloth. The travel iron I found at a Goodwill shop in 2019 that presses silk better than anything I have owned at twice the price. And one more item, added last. A set of specialty bustle hooks in antique gold, the exact style used on a cathedral train gown of that particular construction. I did not tell a single person I was doing any of this. I was not preparing a confrontation. I was not waiting for credit. I was simply being the person I have always been. 2 weeks before the wedding, Cassie called me from her car, whispering so she would not be overheard. The boutique seamstress had completed the initial alterations, and the fit was off, pulling under the arms, gaping slightly at the back. There was a final appointment in 4 days. Cassie was hoping it would sort everything out. I told her it would likely be fine, and I meant it as genuine comfort. But I listened more carefully than she probably realized. Then, 3 days before the wedding, a message came in from an unfamiliar number. A woman named Renata introduced herself as the boutique seamstress. She had gotten my number from Cassie, who had mentioned me to her. She wrote, "I was told you are the real thing. I want you to know, the final fitting went well, but the bustle brackets on this style are my concern." I reinforced what I could. "But watch the left side." I did my best. A pause in the thread. "Then, I hope you are there on the day." I held the phone in both hands and read it twice. Then I replied, "Thank you, Renata. I will be ready." That Friday evening, I packed my full professional kit into the small rolling bag I have had since my theater days. Every tool organized, every thread color accounted for, the travel iron wrapped in its pressing cloth and tucked into the side pocket. I lifted the bag into the trunk of my car. Then I went inside, put the kettle on, and went to bed at my usual time. Some preparations do not require witnesses. I was dressed and at my kitchen table with my second cup of coffee by 9 o'clock Saturday morning. The ceremony was at 1. I had no formal role in this wedding. I was a guest. A grandmother by affection, if not by blood. A woman who had been quietly told that her expertise was not required. The doorbell rang at 10:47. I already knew. Diane stood on my porch steps with the garment bag clutched to her chest in both arms. Her hair was perfectly done, her dusty rose dress was lovely, and her mascara was running down her face. Behind her, at the bottom of the steps, I caught a glimpse of white Cassie, in the gown, waiting by the car because she could not manage my porch steps in the dress. "The zipper failed," Diane said. Her voice was stripped of every bit of its usual composure. Just a mother who needed help. "And the bustle, the left side, just like you said, Beverly, I didn't know who else to call." I opened the door wider. "Bring it inside," I said. "Hang it on the tall hook by the entry. Give me a moment with it." I examined the gown for 90 seconds. The zipper had separated at its highest stress point, a fixable failure, not a catastrophic one. The left bustle bracket had pulled completely free of its anchor, exactly as I had anticipated, exactly as Renata had warned. I straightened up and looked at Diane. "The zipper will take 35 minutes. I said. "The bustle anchor needs to be reset. I'll double stitch it differently than it was done the first time. That is another 25 minutes. Then I need 30 minutes to press everything properly, so there is no evidence any of this happened. 90 minutes total. That puts us at 12:17. You have plenty of time." Diane made a sound I had never heard from her before. Something between a laugh and a sob. "Go to my kitchen," I said. "Make coffee. I need to concentrate." As she went, the woman who had managed every detail of this wedding for 11 months went to my modest kitchen and made coffee, because she was frightened and there was nothing else useful she could do. I will be honest with you, those 90 minutes were among the most satisfying of my recent years. Not because Diane was frightened. Not because I had been right about the bustle, though I had been precisely. But because the work was in my hands again, and silk Mikado under good lamplight is genuinely beautiful, and I had not once lost the skill that my mother put in my hands when I was 11 years old. Every seam I set was clean. The zipper came out smooth and even. I reset that bustle bracket with a wider base, double-stitched every stress point, and added the secondary hidden hook exactly where the gown needed it most. Then I steamed the cathedral train section by section, pressed every seam perfectly flat, and hung the gown back on the hook. It looked the way it was always supposed to look, like someone had done it right the first time. Diane stood in the doorway of my sewing room for most of those 90 minutes. She did not speak. When I finished and stepped back, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Beverly." Just my name. But in a voice I had not heard from her in 8 years, smaller, but more real. "I owe you an apology. Not just for today. For a long time before today." I smoothed the pressing cloth in my hands and set it down on the table. "Let's get Cassie into this dress," I said. "We can talk about the rest later." We helped Cassie into the gown at the bottom of my porch steps in the October morning sunlight. When she was fully in it, standing straight, the cathedral train spread behind her exactly the way it was meant to, I had to stop and simply look. The dress moved with her. It held where it needed to hold and gave where it needed to give. Every seam sat where it belonged. Cassie turned carefully to check the back. Then she turned back to me and she said, "Grandma Bev." Just those 2 words, in that voice, and everything that did not need saying out loud was said. At the ceremony, when Cassie walked down that aisle, every single head turned and stayed turned. That is not a given, even with a beautiful bride. It happens when the dress is right, when the fit and the fabric work with the woman wearing it, not merely around her. During the reception, while the band was playing their second set and the dance floor was full, Cassie found me at my table. She gathered the cathedral train carefully in both hands and knelt down in front of me. She took both of my hands in hers, and the people at the nearby tables could hear her clearly when she said, "This dress is what it is because of you. I need you to know that." My son Derek was standing 2 feet away. He had been watching. I watched his face in the moment she said it. Something in him reorganized itself. Later, during the dancing, he came and sat in the empty chair beside me. We are alike in this way. We can sit together in quiet, and that itself is a kind of talking, the same way it was with Robert. After a while, he put his arm around my shoulders. He kept looking at the dance floor. Then he said quietly just to me, "Mom, I should have spoken up. In March and before that. I'm sorry. You're saying it now." I told him, "That counts." I meant it completely. I was not carrying that weight anymore. It had set itself down somewhere in those 90 minutes, needle in hand, the work going well, skill doing exactly what skill does when it is given room. That is the thing about a craft that runs deep enough. It holds you steady when everything else is uncertain. It keeps its word when people don't. In the weeks after the wedding, things changed. Not all at once, not perfectly, not in the neat way that stories sometimes describe. But genuinely. Diane called me the following week, called, not texted, and asked whether I might be willing to teach her to hem a pair of curtain panels she had ordered for the guest room. She did not dress the question up or frame it as anything other than what it was. She just asked. We spent 2 Saturday afternoons at my kitchen table. She was not a natural with a needle, but she was patient with herself in a way I had not seen from her before, and she asked good questions, and she laughed easily at her own small mistakes. There is something that happens when 2 people are both focused on a small and careful task. Defenses come down. Real things get said. By the second Saturday, She was calling me Beverly without seeming to notice that she had long since stopped saying, Derek's mom. We are not best friends. We mayn't never be. But something real was built at that kitchen table, and it was built the way the best things are, stitch by careful stitch, without any fanfare. My sewing room is still my anchor. The singer is still running. Last week, I started a quilt for the baby that Cassie and Paul are expecting in the spring. Soft yellow and pale green, each square cut to the same precise dimension, each seam pressed flat before the next one is joined. Hand-quilted in the simple pattern my mother taught me when I was small. I work on it in the early mornings, when the house is quiet and the light comes through the east window at exactly the angle I like best. Some things do not need to announce themselves. They only need to be ready. Tell me in the comments, have you ever had a skill quietly dismissed by someone, only to have it matter most at exactly the moment it was most needed? I would love to hear your story.